I originally planned on doing a cold open here with like some DeviantArt images and some music, you know, like
bombshells, busties, bouncers, lobbies.
But now I think that even though it was relatively tame, if I showed the whole thing, I'm pretty sure YouTube would do this to me. So now the video just kinda doesn't have an intro. Hey friends, last time I talked about Pokemon, I broke down how a billion lions might be able to stand their ground against all the Pokemon. And today, I wanted to look at another very timely and relevant Pokemon trend, Smasher Pass. In February of 2022, Markiplier randomly uploaded a video where he went through what at the time was all 898 Pokemon and decided which ones he would train with. The internet did the internet thing, lots of people did their own versions, a bunch of people talked about it, and a younger, more naive Schmedley even made a bunch of friends on my Discord server, link in the description, go through it to see what would happen. I didn't have a YouTube channel or anything at the time, I just like to collect data for fun. That's how cool I am. Now that I do have a YouTube channel, I'd like to take that data, alongside the results from hundreds of thousands of other people, and analyze it to figure out who the most smashable Pokemon is, what makes a Pokemon smashable, and maybe even see what other hidden trends I can find. Also along the way, I get to kink shame my friends, and that's always fun. Before we get to the interesting stuff, first let's talk about the data collection. It's important, I promise. For my smaller dataset, I individually sat with each of the 54 participants on a Discord call while they went through every single Pokemon from the first 8 generations. Using the Pokédex section of Pokemon.com, all alternate forms of a Pokemon were considered if present, and 2 Pokédex entries were available for each one, but they were rarely taken into consideration. For the much larger dataset, I pulled the numbers from the publicly available webpage pokesmash.xyz made by Jimmy Boy. I captured the data on the 16th of February 2025, so the exact numbers might be slightly different now, but the ratios and important comparisons will probably be consistent. The people who used pokesmash.xyz were presented with only the default form of a Pokemon with a few art style settings, and a single Pokédex entry that, if I had to guess, was still not paid much mind. More importantly, the website does not require you to stay through all the Pokemon, but it also doesn't let you skip ahead without choosing to either smash or pass every Pokemon on your way there. That means that every single Pokemon should have fewer total votes than the ones before it, and that while Bulbasaur has over 1.5 million votes, less than 400,000 people voted on every Pokemon in the first 8 generations. This is important because while 2/3 of participants dropping out before the end does make it kinda weird, the data probably isn't biased the way it would be if everyone could just skip to their favorites. I'm working with what I got. So, I have 2 different datasets and I will not be merging them for a few reasons. Some of which I'll go over in a little bit. But the reason I mention it up front is that whenever I talk about a Pokemon, like I just did with Bulbasaur, I'll throw up a little card on screen with 2 different metrics for what portion of either set picked Smash. Let's call them Public Data Smashability and Schmedley's Friend Smashability. These 2 are way too high, by the way, you should all be ashamed. The average Public Data Smashability across all Pokemon is 19%, meaning if you chose a random Pokemon and a random 6 people, odds are someone would. The average for the folks from my Discord server is a less disappointing but still high 7%, or rounded up to 1 in 15 people. Now let's look at some specific sets. Here are the 10 least smashable Pokemon from the public dataset. Pretty much what you'd expect, a lot of bugs and rocks. When looking at my smaller set, it's a lot harder to pinpoint a bottom 10 because there's a 300-way tie for 0 votes, and right above that, there's several hundred more Pokemon that have only a single vote each. All of the ones on screen right now are from the same guy, by the way, you know who you are. Onto a much more interesting list, here are the top 10 most smashable Pokemon from the public dataset. Which also brings me to the 2 major reasons I decided not to combine my 2 datasets. First, this list has been tampered with, and I call shenanigans. Remember a few minutes ago when I said no Pokemon should have more total votes than the one before it, since there's no way to skip ahead? Well, that should be true, but it isn't in exactly 2 cases, because Gardevoir has almost 20,000 more total votes than Kirlia, and Lopunny has almost 30,000 more total votes than Baniri. On top of that, on the Pokesmash webpage, if you select Pass on Lopunny, you get a little jump scare to demonstrate that the creator disapproves. This is the only Pokemon that this happens with, so clearly we're dealing with one of his favorites, making the discrepancy even more suspicious. I see what you're doing over there, Jimmy Boy. All the rest of the data seems fine to me, and none of the analysis I'll do for the rest of the video changes much if I remove Gardevoir and Lopunny from the spreadsheet completely. But it does make it hard to call Gardevoir the most smashable Pokemon. If we take a look back at my Discord dataset, here's the top 10 most smashable Pokemon from that. There is some overlap, but overall it's quite different, and what I presume caused those differences is also my second major reason for keeping the two datasets separate: the samples. The public set has a much larger sample size, which is great, but I suspect that my smaller set might be more representative of the general population. Since I know all of the people in my sample, or at least can ask, I know that of the 54 of them, exactly half of them were men, and around 43% of them were attracted exclusively to women, which are both pretty close to the normal proportions of those things. I didn't intend for that to happen, but it's very good for science, so that's cool. When it comes to the bigger public set though, I suspect that both of those groups are overrepresented. First, because they make up the majority of the audience of the content creators that popularize Pokemon Smash or Pass, like Markiplier. But also because if I filter my data to only include responses from the 21 heterosexual men that participated, now the top 10 lines up a lot better with the other one, and so do most of the rest of the rankings. For the record, most of those differences come down exclusively to people being attracted to women, with the gender of the participants not mattering that much. If I separate out the data by gender and ignore sexuality, then barely any Pokemon have significant change in their metrics. Some of the exceptions to that rule include men being 13% more likely to smash the Bellsprout line, and women being 22% more likely to smash the Lickitung line. So, take that how you will. Also, careful ladies, I'm pretty sure that thing can paralyze you. Now, you might remember that the thesis for this video was to find the most smashable Pokemon, and if you've been paying attention, you might also remember that I've already listed 3 different answers to that question, though one of them is sus. So what's the deal there? Is it Ditto or Meowscarada? Or is it Gardevoir after all? Or maybe some 4th answer that I'm saving for a later reveal? Well, surveys are great for some things, but they do have their shortcomings, especially in fields like marketing, where you're trying to figure out what people like or want, which just so happens to also be what we're trying to figure out here. Luckily, if you're like me and you have a huge dataset, then there's a lot you can learn from analyzing it beyond just the raw answers. So, let's dig deeper into it. And, since this video about having relations with Pokemon wasn't absurd enough already, I'm going to make a bunch of charts along the way. Who doesn't like charts? Let's start simple. If we categorize every Pokemon by the generation of games it first appeared in, here's what we get. The standout winner is the first generation of games, with Gens 2, 4, 6, and 7 all coming in above the 19% average. Quick disclaimer about Gen 9. As of the recording of this video, the 9th generation of games, the one that began with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, is incomplete, with Legend ZA still on the horizon. In addition, when the trend was originally popular and most of the data in both sets was gathered, Gen 9 hadn't even begun yet. Since Jimmy Boy's webpage has been updated with the new Pokemon, they've gathered around 70,000 votes. And while preparing to make this video, I was able to convince 12 people from my Discord to submit data for Gen 9. But in both cases, that's still a lot less to work with than for the rest of the roster. The people who did vote on the new Pokemon do like a handful of them, but not enough to dig the whole generation out of last place. Next up, let's look at the typings. Out of the 18 available types, Stellar isn't real and you can't convince me otherwise, the Fairy type has the highest average smashability at over 25%, with Dark Dragon, Fighting Fire, and Psychic also coming in above average. I was going to say that Fire seems a bit out of place there, but then I remembered that Fire type starters have a history of being, let's say, anthropomorphic. When it comes to type combinations, the top contender is Fighting and Steel, and all 37 of these come in above average, though a lot of them are outliers having only a few Pokemon each. I didn't make a chart for this one since there are so many, but my spreadsheet with all of my analysis and charts will be in the description in case you want to explore or filter through the data yourself. Only the public data spreadsheet though, since that data is already, public. Anyway, I mentioned starters a little while ago, and I don't have a better segue than that, so next up is Pokemon categories. Categories are sometimes ill-defined groups of Pokemon that share some kind of consistent special trait. Some of them are directly defined in-game, like starters, fossils, legendaries, or fake legendaries, and some are fan-defined, like pseudo-legendaries, or each region's bug, bird, rodent, and Pikachu clone. It seems like fans don't always agree on what counts as the rodent, bird, or bug, so in those cases I included all options, even the weird ones. Here's the chart for that, with Mythicals in the lead at nearly 30% smashability on average. Sometimes people separate out Pokemon that they call sub-legendaries from the more special real legendaries, and if we do that, legendary Pokemon take the top spot instead, with over 30% smashability. In the spirit of splitting groups up, I also listed past and future Paradox Pokemon separately this time, but it didn't really change anything. Next up is the evolution stage. Every Pokemon is either a first stage, middle stage, final stage, or solo evolution. The data I pulled on evolutions seems to only include the generation they were introduced in, so like for instance Pikachu and Pichu are both listed as first stage. And I could manually go through and correct all of them, but I didn't. Don't worry though, it won't have any significant impact. The chart is pretty much exactly how you'd expect, nothing surprising here. But there are a couple interesting specific cases that I wanted to bring up. First is the Hoppip line, and first of all, they all have a PDS over 10%, and that's just ridiculous. Second of all, this is one of the very few lines that doesn't strictly gain smashability as they evolve, with the least popular being the middle stage, Skiploom. But like, why? Sure, it's less than a percentage point of difference, but that's almost 7,000 people that are into this, pass on this, and back on board for this. And I can't even begin to imagine why. Are they not all just blobs? The second case I wanted to look at is the Nidoran line, because while both versions of the evolution line do get more smashable as they evolve, in the final stages, the female-exclusive Nidoqueen beats out the male-exclusive Nidoking, while in the younger stages, male Nidoran and Nidorino are considered more smashable than female Nidoran and Nidorina. There are jokes I could make about that, but I don't want to say any of them, so just, there it is. Speaking of gender, Pokemon species can also have different gender ratios, and here's the graph for that. Nothing too surprising. Female-only Pokemon are considered the most smashable, but several other ratios still come in above average. While we're on the topic of Pokemon genders, let's take a look at breeding. Actually, I guess that's what the whole video is about, huh? So, more specifically, let's take a look at egg groups. All Pokemon are assigned 1 or 2 egg groups, like types, but these determine which ones can breed when left together in daycare. There's 15 of them, here they are, and here's the graph. Do you think maybe one of these is an outlier? If I ignore the exclusive Ditto group, here's the new chart, which puts the undiscovered egg group on top, which is what unbreedable Pokemon like legendaries fall into. Right under that is the human-like group, which, on top of making sense as one of the most attractive, offers a nice transition to talk about body shape. Every Pokemon is also assigned a body plan from one of these 14 options. Some of the Pokemon in some of the categories are questionable, but ignoring that and just taking the data as is, here's the average smashability of each body type, with bipedal with no tail just barely beating out bipedal with a tail, and quadruped, serpentine, and head and base all being near the top. Almost done with the bar graphs, the last important way that each Pokemon is officially categorized is color. Like with body shape, some of the choices for official color are a bit odd, but it isn't up to me. So here's the average smashability of each color. Pink is up top, guess it goes with the fairy type, and black, blue, purple, white, and yellow all also perform pretty well. There are other characteristics I could analyze, like hatch time or leveling rate, but this section is already kinda long, and neither of those matter that much. As long as you don't level at a medium fast rate, evidently that gives people the ick. So, we have a bunch of charts, and don't worry, there will be more, but for now, how do we even use them to figure out who the most smashable Pokemon is? Well, the easiest way to do that would be to find which Pokemon, if any, match the top spot in all of the characteristics we just went over. So, here's our list of all Pokemon. First, we filter by those in Generation 1, then we find the Steel fighting types, and no results. Alright, maybe the Dual type was asking too much. What about any Gen 1 Fairy type? There we go. Next up, it would have to be either Mythical or Legendary, and no results again. So that didn't work, and I didn't even get to most of the requirements. Maybe there is no perfect Pokemon that meets all of the top criteria, but which ones come the closest? What if instead of requiring the absolute best qualities, we try and see if any Pokemon have only good qualities and score above average in every single metric? Back at our unfiltered list. This time, let's start with Pokemon from generations 1, 2, 4, 6, and 7 that have any combination of the Dark, Dragon, Fairy, Fighting, Fire, and Psychic types. Doing better now, there's still 96 Pokemon in the running. Sorting by category, our ideal Pokemon would need to be a Legendary, Mythical, Pseudo-Legendary, Starter, Sub-Legendary, or Ultra Beast. Paradox Pokemon would also be acceptable, but Gen 9 is already out. They'd also need to be a Final or Solo Evolution, and have any of these egg groups, leaving only 18 Pokemon left. Filtering out undesirable gender ratios and body types takes us down to 14, and doing the same for color brings us to our final 10. None of which were in any of the top 10s from when we just sorted directly by survey results. It's mostly Pokemon that are either Legendary or Legendary adjacent, but also Typhlosion. Why is he here? What did he do this time? To choose between these 10, let's analyze them some more. We're pretty much out of discrete categories to look through, so now we need some fancier charts. Let's start with height and weight. Here's the smashability of every Pokemon by their height, and... wait, hold on. Here's the smashability of every Pokemon by their height, now with a logarithmic x-axis, and we can see the points form a vague bell curve in both height and density, meaning our ideal Pokemon should be within a standard deviation of the maximum average smashability. Standard deviation, by the way, is literally just that. It's how far apart the data gets. We need to use it now as a range, because unlike with the bar graphs, now there's hundreds of different values to deal with. To calculate standard deviation, we use this formula, which is kind of a hassle, but luckily, Google Sheets lets me not deal with it. So, our standard deviation in height is 1.25 meters. Looking at our scatter plot and going through a very mathematical process called eyeballing it, I think the maximum is probably around here at the 1.8 meter mark. It's a little more to the right than it looks like because of all the empty space on the left. Going 1.25 meters in either direction means we're looking for a Pokemon somewhere between 0.55 and 3.05 meters tall. That's a pretty big range, but looking back at our finalists, it does disqualify Mew and the 3 other Mews for being too short, and also Guzzlord is out for being too tall. Doing all the same stuff for weight, here's the plot. Standard deviation is 124 kilograms. The maximum is roughly right here at the 90-ish mark, meaning any Pokemon that weighs between -20 and 210 kilograms gets a pass. Some Pokemon are really heavy, and that's why their range is weird. It also doesn't eliminate anyone, because as it turns out, height and weight are correlated. Who knew? With those two covered, we've pretty much done everything about how Pokemon look. So what about what they do? Here's a list of all abilities ranked by smashability. It doesn't do a whole lot. All 7 abilities from our remaining 5 Pokemon come in above average, and some of them are signature abilities, which is kinda cheating. Since that didn't go anywhere, what about base stats? Here's the smashability of Pokemon based on their stat total. And unlike height and weight, instead of the data looking like a bell curve, it looks more like there's a positive correlation between a higher base stat total and a higher smashability. It's not like a super steep slope, but it is there. Trust me, I'm now the world's leading expert in Pokemon smashability statistics. It's not a very competitive field. So we would sort out anyone left with a low stat total, but there aren't any. Onto the individual stats, let's do them quickly. Here's HP, the maximum average is around the 80 mark, standard deviation is 27, so anything from 53 to 107 HP is ideal. Here's attack, it's a little weirder and the pattern is the loosest of any of the scatter plots, but the maximum average is something like 90, standard deviation is 30, so we're looking at Pokemon between 60 and 120 attack. Here's defense, one of the tightest plots, maximum average is around 75, standard deviation is 29, making the most attractive range 46 to 104 defense. Here's speed, and like base stat total, it's more of a positive correlation, meaning the faster a Pokemon is, the better. And the same goes for both special attack and special defense. All things considered, the most smashable Pokemon should be a fast, special-focused attacker with good but limited physical bulk on top of a high stat total to begin with. Looking back at our options, Cresselia and Xerneas are too bulky, and for the rest, there's a clear winner in speed, special attack, and base stat total. Mewtwo. And for that matter, there aren't that many Pokemon at all that fit that description as well as Mewtwo does, even without all of the other things. If I do all that analysis on my smaller, more diverse dataset, some of the charts are pretty different, but it still all points to Mewtwo. I've crunched the numbers every which way, and it's always Mewtwo. Just Mewtwo. You may think you know what you like, but according to math and science, you're wrong and it's this. This is what peak performance looks like. This is what they're hiding from us. This is... Anyway, this video was completely serious and unironic, and I'm sure everyone will be totally normal about my conclusion. Let me know in the comments what your favorite Pokemon is. I mean in like the normal way, not the Mewtwo way. I like Phanpy. And in the meantime, just know that in terms of human and Pokemon breeding, Mewtwo is the most compatible Pokemon for humans. Not only are they lab-grown to be more human-like, Mewtwo is 2 meters tall and weighs 122 kilograms. That means they're large enough to be able to handle people, and with their impressive base stats and access to Protect, they can excel on the top or the bottom. Due to their extraordinary intelligence and psychic powers, there's no doubt in my mind that an interested Mewtwo would know exactly what you want, maybe even more than you do. They can also learn moves like Endure, Bulldoze, and Helping Hand, along with their Tail and Telekinesis, so they have plenty of options. With their ability Pressure, they can drain your PP just by being in the room, and with moves like Rest and Recover, they can easily get over fatigue. No other Pokemon comes close to this level of compatibility. Also, fun fact, Mewtwo already has experience dealing with rock-hard men. Mewtwo are literally built for humans, the ultimate life form, unmatched by any other. They can smash all day in every way imaginable and still come back for more. That paragraph caused me physical pain, so I hope you appreciated it. And stay nice, everyone.